It's going to be about that because just a year or so ago, I reviewed a handful of books and I asked, hey, let me know if you want me to create more. And that's why we're doing it. And because some of you enjoyed those videos, I'm going to do part 3 where I'm going to give you my thoughts on a few more books on leadership. And actually, some of them are going to be out of the box as in the previous sessions. And the first book is Avore of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's actually one of my favorite books ever. It's about the inner battle, the resistance you face when you need to do something, especially creative effort, or you want to, I don't know, write a blog post or create a video or design this UI kit. Nobody's forcing you and you kind of delay it, even if you would love to accomplish it and just make it happen. This is exactly what the book is about. It's really how to go through those inner creative battles and just mash through it. And the recipe to actually overcoming it is super simple, is showing up and doing the work regardless of how you feel. And why is this so good for design leaders? It's because it doesn't matter the seniority you are or what type of work you're gonna do. Like, your creative capability and the things you could be doing is simply gonna expand, and you are gonna have even more problems or issues to deal with and even more ideas to overcome and actually make it happen. Prioritization is gonna be a big, massive factor to that, and figuring out how to prioritize things is gonna be very important. But also being able to just show up and do the things which, you know, you might just procrastinate on with something else, or simply there is some sort of inner resistance. So I covered that in a few videos here and there. Make sure to check them out. But ultimately, we're all gonna face that, and we're all dealing with that. And even me creating these videos, or this specific video, I went through so much resistance just to arrive at that, so I can influence it and provide some sort of ideas and thought leadership and level up your UX game. It's all me going through those resistance bits. So it doesn't matter what seniority you are, you're gonna deal with resistance sooner or later. Now, the next one is The Science of Storytelling and why narratives and stories resonate so much for us as humans. This is super important read for any design leader because everything we do is going to be story bound or narrative bound. The more uncertain things are, the more strategic things are, the more they need the reinforcement of vision and narratives to actually for people to be able to buy in and, you know, go with it and contribute. So for team managers and leaders of any caliber, storytelling is one of the most important parts. You cannot tell bad stories because people are just not gonna follow. There's quite a few different examples of the stories, especially of the scientific research and like behavioral capture of how people perceive things and why does it matter to us as human species from like historical perspective and evolution perspective. But you're gonna understand that every signal is a story basically, and so you have to make it right. And the next one is a small one, Do Lead. And it's part of a series of do/something, do design, do innovate, things of that nature. Do Lead is really just about the leadership. And it's a perfect summary of what leadership really is and all the different dynamics you would encounter as a leader in design organizations or anywhere else, even if it's a personal leadership or, let's say, family leadership, community leadership. You have those dynamics which require, let's say, contribution, which require persistence, which require leading by example and role modeling something. To me, one of the big takeaways was that, you know, some of us are perceiving that we're not leading at all, but in reality, even if like you're a team of one or you're a team of part of other people, you're always leading. I could probably say that this summarizes maybe 100 books on leadership, so it's worth picking up. And now the next one, I didn't appreciate it back in the day when I bought it. As you can see, if the pages are yellowed, you can tell that it has been a while since I read it. I have the markings as well in different colors of the pages. Team of Teams is written by US Army General Stanley McChrystal. And you can immediately understand that those dynamics out there in military world are very complex because of the culture, because of the, I guess, red tape, because of all the different standards and risks being taken every day. Ultimately, I didn't realize the potential of this book, or didn't appreciate back in the day, because I was managing, I think, 1 or 2 people when I read it first, and I didn't really understand why the dynamics could shift so much if you become a manager of multiple teams, or you manage the managers, let's say. It gives you a good example of how to empower the frontline staff or the frontline people who are actually dealing with the smallest of the issues, and how they can see, let's say, 100% of the issues. And you might not be able to see all of them, not being present in every situation. It's like, how do you establish the channels so absolutely everyone can come to you? It doesn't matter like how many levels you're separated at, give you that message, which could be tremendous in mission success, which is super important. So if you're basically a design leader, or working as someone who wants to become a design leader in massive organizations, this is a must. Now, you probably noticed that I don't really have many design books, or at least written by designers or common design industry reads. Apart from this one, it's a combo breaker. But on that note, if you want me to cover specifically design book summaries, maybe some sort of compilations of different reads, and you just want me to run through that, giving you a takeaway or two or an idea of it, do let me know, because again, I have hundreds of them, so might as well share it. But Liftoff, and with a slogan, "Practical Design Leadership to Elevate Your Team, Your Organization, and You," is a perfect read for growing and leading designers from a perspective that it's packed with not as much, I guess, strategic elements, but super tactical and super practical advice. Pleasantly surprised by that, because it tells you, let's say, one of the things which I definitely was digging into was the nitty-gritty behind the scenes of a hiring manager. I had to figure out a lot of that by trial and error. You don't have to. You can just read this book and know exactly how to structure your interviews, how to negotiate salaries with the candidates, so forth, and how to ask for different bids, how to go through career paths, how to set up your teams, and so forth. So it's super packed with tactical advice, and you can see it's quite a thick book at that too. It's definitely worth picking up, especially if you're climbing into the leadership, and you might have seen it in the trenches how difficult it is, but it doesn't have to be if you have a book like that. The previous 2 sessions I had of the leadership books, I touched a lot of the Stoicism ideas and philosophy, and I love to structure my life around it too, because life is difficult. Doesn't matter what you do, where you are at, you're almost meant to face challenges to arrive at happiness or to arrive at fulfillment. It's just the conditions we, as mammals at least, set ourselves up with. And evolutionary speaking, have to, because otherwise we wouldn't be, incentivized to gather resources, or from a psychological angle, support ourselves through a life, and, do all the different things we want to do. Discipline is destiny is a lot of different things, Stoicism included, by Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors, I guess, of all times. I talked about Obstacle is a Way and Daily Stoic and Ego is the Enemy in the previous sessions, but this is in particular a very important read, because you cannot do anything in your life without discipline, especially at leadership positions. Again, you're going to have so many distractions, you're going to have so many challenges coming your way every single day, you're going to have so many emotions to deal with from different people and all those storms, and your own, of course, your own personal life, and like separating it takes a lot of effort, and it takes discipline. And in leadership positions, you have no other choice but self-control to move forward, because you are there to really inspire, to motivate, to set vision, to prevent a lot of different risky situations to happen, to prevent things falling apart, to basically create a positive change and movement. And if you don't control yourself or be disciplined enough, you're not leading by example, you're not setting a standard high enough for yourself and your team, and so it's bound to fail. The next one is Noise by Daniel Kahneman, Olivier, Sibony, Cass R. Sustein. And this is basically, I guess, a follow-up of Think Slow and Fast, known book. You probably read it, you probably at least heard about it. The noise really is every signal which is not worth acting on. At least that's how I perceive it. What I took most from this book is really the group dynamics, because leaders need followers, and followers tend to come in groups. That's how you create movement as a leader. But what groups do the most is really that they amplify the message. a positive message or a bad message. It's up to you as a leader to choose which message and how to channel it so that the movement is positive instead of negative. And there is a lot of other bits from, let's say, sequencing information, how you surface it, how you access it, how you kind of like set the boundaries, I guess, for the movement to follow through and so forth. The next one is more fundamental and existential, I guess. As usual, it's a terrific read, otherwise I wouldn't talk about it. And it's Hell Yeah or No by Derek Sivers. It's about the things which are worth doing. And Derek Sivers is an entrepreneur, author, programmer, a lot of different things. But what he is to me is really one of those virtual mentors, which when I read his writing, I'm just, I can apply immediately a message. It's kind of like, I guess, Seth Godin of sorts, or one of those figures. You read this tiny essay and you can immediately kind of say, okay, my life can be better if I take it on and just apply it today. And this is exactly about that. It's what is worth doing. For a leader, you're going to find a lot of those situations where you have a lot of paths to take. And you're always going to have way too many paths to take, and you're going to maybe be able to take 1 out of 100 paths. So the clear route would be to actually say no to some things, or actually say no to most of the things. This is an oversimplified way, but it's kind of like a philosophy of living and decision making, especially for leaders, that if it's not a hell yeah, it's probably a no. And I know in a business situation, it's a bit more tricky than that, because hell yeah for the business or your team might mean a lot of different things than yourself, and it's usually that. So you need to reflect on that, but then you kind of have to put that hat on and say, this is a hell yeah for the team, so let's do that. And so this next book, it's called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, and it's one of those yellowed pages books. It sat on a shelf for quite some time. I read it back in the day, but I keep coming back to it because it's a perfect recipe book, pun intended. It's basically about setting up yourself for success and building relationships. And one of the things which I just need to take a look at the cover, even if I read it years ago, and kind of say, oh, I remember this big notion which was tremendous in how I shaped my relationships at work, in real life, and so forth, was that you must take time to develop relationships and actually make it conscious decision, not just kind of leave it to surprise or leave it be around the actual goals or objectives you might have with another person, like at work. Let's say if you work in one team and you have a lot of different things to do, not leave relationships to form around those things, because those things and environment shape your relationships and your behaviors. And so it could influence it a lot of different ways. And something I always advise juniors or seniors or leading designers, tackle your environment before you tackle your own behaviors and how you develop as a person or as a leader. And relationships would be one of those things. If you can make tiny changes, then naturally that it's going to impact your success down the road. And simple things like engagement with connectors, engagement with stakeholders, with key people, trying to connect with them on a human level, being humble about it and so forth, is one of the small bits in this book, but I'm sure you could find a lot of other aspects. And this is key for design leaders, especially because it's all going to come down to you building relationships, not so much what you do in Figma, let's say. It's just as simple as that. And last one is probably the smallest of the books. It's Free Will by Sam Harris. And it's maybe a bit more on a philosophy note or self-development note, but this is a super important book, especially when dealing with your own reactive self, but also reactive self of other people. In the best of the ways, there's a lot of moral definitions of the things of what does free will mean. And there's a lot of knock-on effects of that too, like how do we approach different tricky situations in the society or firms, or when it comes to, let's say, ethical decisions and so forth. But ultimately, some of the things what I got away out of the book, so the past is not something really what happened now or what I just said on this recording, not really something I consciously planned in. It was something I just sort of thought about telling you about, but it was, intuitive, immediate, unconscious, and I just spoke it out to you. I could change the direction of my talk right now to you, as let's say maybe we're working together or you're viewing this video or whatever the scenario might be, but that would change the future. And the present is really, again, so reactive that it's really hard to influence. Because of those dynamics, I'm super oversimplifying this here. A lot of the things people do is not really what they would do normally or can reflect. Therefore, it's easier to shape their futures instead of shaping their past or their present. You can tell someone, let's say that, you know, they're underperforming, let's say, or they're performing well and giving positive feedback, which is preferred way, but that is going to influence their future and likely, perhaps, just perhaps, how they act and what they do and what decisions they make. But the free will, based on this book and based on Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist, is not really existent by any definition, because there is just so many different shortcomings of that logic or that thinking, that we all have free will to act. If you know that, you can do something about it. You can be more forgiving, if anything at all. And these deeper subjects are very important for design leaders, because it's exactly what you're gonna, you know, kind of face in the end of the day when you're gonna try to get some sleep because something didn't work out the way you wanted to, or you wanted to lead, but it didn't, you know, create that positive change or movement you wanted to. It's gonna come down to things like that, because some things are just things which you need to kind of reflect and dig deeper to find out exactly what the first principles are like, or what those key variables could shift if you do just a little bit different things. But yeah, pick it up if you're interested. And that really finishes our session on the books. If you're interested again about general design books, do let me know. I can cover that. I have way too many of the reads. That has been some of the, I guess, key ways I developed my skill set throughout the years, and I'm very grateful for all the people who actually spent so many years really writing those books and sharing with others, because it's a gold mine, and it's, you know, quite a cheap way to actually upskill yourself. Of course, you need mentorship and other bits and trials and errors too. If you like this video, share it. It truly helps. And on that note, I'll see you next time.